I'm going to be the moderator of this session. I am an economist and a statistician in UNCTAD statistics, on behalf of which I'm speaking today. We are very pleased to welcome you in this side event on measuring South-South cooperation through the United Nations Global Voluntary Framework. So the primary purpose of this side event is to showcase this new statistical framework, which will populate the data for the new SDG indicator 17.3.1, which is supposed to measure additional resources for development in accordance with the 2030 agenda. So the conception of the framework in itself is a success story in South-South cooperation, in which many countries, many developing or emerging countries from Latin America, Africa, Asia, join forces to come up with a measure of their own. So in this side event, we will discuss the framework. We will also share some insights on future prospects, especially regarding the technical refinement, the implementation, and the testing of the framework. We will also present various initiatives by pioneering countries, by multilateral institutions in measuring South-South cooperation and how they articulate with the framework. The second objective is to raise awareness about hurdles ahead of us before being able to report data into the SDGs as requested by the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. The third objective is to create new collaborations and new synergies. We have already organized a series of events over the past month, but we think that the GSSD Expo is giving us a unique opportunity to reach out to broader crowds of stakeholders at the national, regional, and global levels. And we're really grateful to UNOCC for allowing that. So we are set for a very exciting and passionate session with our esteemed panelists. I'm going to ask the panelists to try to do their best to abide by the allocating time, as we have a very tight time frame, and so that we can allow some discussion in the end of the event. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Anu Peltola, Acting Director of UNCTAD Statistics, who will deliver the opening remarks for the side events on behalf of UNCTAD Secretary General, who could not make it today and who requested us to share her sincere apologies. Anu, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rashid, dear panelists, delegates, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, as you will see, the UNCTAD Secretary General, Ms. Greenspan, had a last-minute change to her calendar, and just last Friday, she asked me to deliver her opening remarks to you. So I would like to welcome you to this UNCTAD side event on measuring South-South cooperation. Here is what the Secretary General wishes to convey to you today. We are coming together today, first of all, to celebrate the work carried out by countries of the Global South under the auspices of the United Nations by joining forces, capabilities, and efforts to develop and agree upon a global voluntary framework to measure South-South cooperation for the first time. The Buenos Aires Action Plan already decades ago emphasized South-South cooperation as a vital force. The high-level UN conferences on South-South cooperation in 2009 in Nairobi and 2019 in Buenos Aires encouraged initiatives for information and data collection in this area upon the request of developing countries. It is on your request that UNCTAD will represent developing countries in future work to put this voluntary framework into practice and to refine it technically so that it can be applied flexibly by all countries wishing to do so. Needs for data on South-South cooperation are mounting, so as to quantify the mutual support by countries of the South, and to consider it alongside official development assistance based on data collected and owned by the Global South this time. This Expo offers an opportunity for us to jointly acknowledge the work accomplished and plan ahead. Please allow me to express my sincere gratitude to the UN Office on South-South Cooperation for hosting and enabling this event. The voluntary framework to measure South-South cooperation will directly inform the new Sustainable Development Goals Indicator 1731 on additional financial resources mobilized for developing countries from multiple sources. Mr. Sukhbir Singh, our chair from India, will tell us about the development of the framework today. It was adopted by all UN member states at the 53rd session of the United Nations Statistical Commission in March this year. The director of the UN Statistics Division, Stefan Schweinfest, has joined us today to make a link to the SDG indicator framework. The indicator will measure development support, including South-South cooperation. The Commission, the UN member states requested UNCTAD to act as a custodian of the indicator with the OECD. The framework will help increase the visibility of South-South cooperation, we believe. Needless to say, in the landscape of resource mobilization, South-South cooperation has long been documented to play a unique role in fostering inclusive and sustainable development, diversifying economic and trade partners, enhancing regional integration and disseminating knowledge and skills to enable technological upgrade, all of which is crucial for developing countries' structural transformation. However, and partly due to the lack of data, this tremendous potential is too often underestimated or overlooked in the international development narrative. South-South cooperation is likely to take more prominent space in the current geopolitical context. While most developing countries are still reeling from the pandemic and facing unprecedented challenges to finance development and cope with debt sustainability, official development assistance from the North has been stagnating. This framework with the data by countries of the South will pave the way for redefining the standards on international development aid towards what they should be, taking into consideration the experience and the needs of both Southern providers and recipients. But there are also hurdles ahead for this framework to materialize as concrete data and reporting on the SDG indicator. To this end, UNCTAD is firmly committed to strengthening national capacities to measure South-South cooperation in a country-led process and to ensure that the SDG indicator be informed also with data measured by the Global South. In 2023, UNCTAD will launch a global capacity development program with the UN regional commissions to test the initial framework with the countries. And this will be done in collaboration with the UN Statistics Division to provide training and study tours for peer learning and share experience and tools for data collection among countries of the South. The UNCTAD Secretary General has asked for the creation of an advisory board led by and consisting of Southern countries to steer capacity and methodology development, ensuring country ownership. UNCTAD will also develop and set up global data reporting platform for the countries of the South who are interested to report data on the SDG indicator. I welcome interested countries to join these capacity development efforts. We now have the means to undertake informed actions on the demanding call by the 2015 Addis Ababa Action Agenda and the 2030 Agenda to unlock the full potential of South-South cooperation and mobilize additional resources for development. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a fruitful exchange today. Thank you, Rashid. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Anu. Thank you for setting the stage and reminding us about the mandate of the UN as well as the stakes around this new statistical framework. I just wanted to stress out here that if you are interested in joining the effort of testing, refining or implementing the framework as a pioneering country or as a beneficiary country who would like to strengthen its technical capacity, you can approach me after the event or my UNCTAD colleagues, and we will get into touch. So now, without further ado, I would like to hand the floor over to Mr. Stefan Schwenfeist, who is the director of UN Statistic Division in UNDESA. Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rashid, distinguished panelists and delegates, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's really a great honor and pleasure for me as the director of the United Nations Statistics Division in New York normally to connect to you today from Washington, where we have a big meeting of all the chief statisticians of the United Nations system, and where we are talking about improvements to the data landscape everywhere at the national, regional, and global levels, and in particular, of course, in support of the Sustainable Development Goals agenda of the United Nations. Let me, in this context, join in congratulating you, the countries of the Global South, to your successful efforts to develop and agree upon a global voluntary framework to measure South-South cooperation for the first time. For 2 years, the countries of the Global South participated in the working group on measurement of development support and worked in its subgroup on South-South cooperation to develop this initial framework. I would also like to express my deep and great appreciation to my dear colleagues at the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development for providing crucial and tireless support to the subgroup. Thanks to all of these successful efforts, the Statistical Commission, for which we in my office are the Global Secretariat, at its 53rd session in March just this year, adopted the new indicator 17.3.1, additional financial resources mobilized for developing countries from multiple sources, which includes South-South cooperation, and hereby filling an important gap in the global SDG indicator framework and the global information on development support. This new indicator, for the first time, captures the mutual support that countries of the Global South provide to each other and allows a more complete and more accurate view on development support. It is based on a measurement framework developed and owned by countries of the Global South, and it reflects your understanding of your mutual relationships with each other. At the Statistical Commission, the member states requested UNCTAD to be the co-custodian of the new indicator and to support further work on the measurement of South-South cooperation, including on global reporting and capacity building. This work should be undertaken under the leadership of countries from the Global South, and the Commission invited countries involved in South-South cooperation to work closely with UNCTAD. The development of this initial conceptual framework already gained wide recognition and praise within the United Nations. The Interagency Task Force on Financing for Development called it a breakthrough for the measurement of South-South cooperation. It noted that South-South cooperation continues to expand in scope, volume, and geographical reach, and that Southern providers should continue further work on its measurement. The development and agreement on the conceptual framework to measure South-South cooperation marks not the end, but on the contrary, the beginning of the efforts to its actual measurement. I'm very pleased to hear that UNCTAD will launch a global capacity development program to test the initial framework in cooperation with the United Nations Regional Commissions in 2023 and under the guidance of the southern countries. I strongly urge countries to support and to participate in these efforts, to set up mechanisms in their countries to compile and report the required information, and to participate in the global reporting of this new indicator through UNCTAD according to the agreed conceptual framework on South-South cooperation. We at the United Nations Statistics Division of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs are eagerly awaiting the first data provided by you and reported through UNCTAD. Count on our support. Thank you very much for this opportunity to connect to you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you for the elaboration on the new SDG indicator and for showing how central it is for the progress toward the SDGs. If you want to know more about this SDG indicator, I invite you to refer to the documentation on the GSSD website, in which you will find details on the institutional and scientific process which led to the creation of and the revision of this new SDG indicator. So now to delve into more into the statistical, actually the statistical framework on South-South, which is a component of the new SDG indicator, I would like to invite Mr. Sukhbir Singh, who was the chair of the IGSDG group on South-South collaboration, to tell us more about the framework as well as the institutional process. Sukhbir, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Rashid, and my thanks due to all the organizers for giving me this opportunity. My distinguished panelists, as well as the respected participants. I will confine myself to 2 or 3 important points, that how this conceptual framework was developed and what it is and the way forward. The working group was established sometimes in May 2020 for the measurement of development support and for finding out the indicator for this target 17.3, which states that measuring the development support to developing countries from all multiple sources. And when we try to itemize the sources, then the 4 main sources were itemized, and these are ODA, which is generally considered as North-South cooperation. And another one is other official fund transfers. Then another was private finance, and 4th one was this South-South cooperation. As we all know that the development landscape of the world, it keeps on changing and changing very fast, and we keeps on trying to capture it into different kind of documents, and the most important documents are 2030 agenda as well as Addis Ababa action agenda, which captures our aspirations as well as the balancing act of the development between the economic, ecological, and social. Keeping those aspirations, keeping those documents into consideration, the working group started its meeting, and it was in the October around 2020 October that it was decided to create further subgroup out of this preliminary working group, so that we could delve deep into some of the issues. And 3 issues three areas were identified. One was South-South cooperation, another was mobilization of private finance, and third was international public goods. These three subgroups were formed, and from the India side, was elected. I mean, India was elected as chair of the South-South cooperation. The terms of reference defined our area, and we were supposed to advise the working group to how best to address the measurement of South-South cooperation. UNCTAD at that time presented a presentation in which it was shown that what is the nature of South-South cooperation, what is its relations with the other type of cooperations, most importantly North and South cooperation. And it turned that the wide agreement is on this concept that South-South cooperation is basically not the substitute for the North-South cooperation, rather it is a complement. Then we entered into the arena of this Buenos Aires Action Plan, BAPA, 1978, that document which guided us, and then BAPA +40, then the resolution of the General Assembly, particularly the para 8, 18, 25, and 26. We were, the whole group on the South-South cooperation was guided by these documents, as well as the principles, the nature described in those documents. Well, all the countries who are participating in the South-South cooperation, they were invited to this subgroup, and voluntarily 10 countries from South-South cooperation participants, they volunteered to contribute in this group. Apart from those 10 countries, 2 were OECD and Russia. They were the in the capacity of as observer, and OECD's contribution was particularly to explain and to give the clue to the South-South cooperation subgroup, clue on the basis of their TOSD methodology. Generally, it is a total official sustainable support. That is the full form of that TOSD methodology being developed or developed by the OECD countries. Well, then our group also has gone through the normal process of any group dynamic, that is storming, norming, and then of course performing. All the countries, they participated, they contributed to the development of this framework, and it is based particularly on the experience of the Mexico as well as Brazil. They took the lead to create this matrix, and all other countries, they supported, they contributed, they also criticized some of the items they were dropped, some of the items they were added. That was the process of refinement. And then this whole matrix, it was circulated to all the countries participating in the subgroup. Every country was given the opportunity to respond according to their own national contexts. And almost all the countries, almost all the 10 countries, they responded to this matrix, and this matrix was further refined. That is how we arrived at this matrix, at this table, at this conceptual framework. Now, coming to the second point, what it is. Basically, it is a grouping of the modalities different countries of the South they are using to cooperate each other. When we refer to the BAPA 1978, it is clear from that outcome document that the emphasis was on knowledge sharing only. But when we come to the 2019 document of BAPA plus 40, then it is clearly visible that South-South cooperation has become multidimensional, and the landscape of the development, it has also changed, and South-South cooperation is contributing. It is a vital force in the development. We have taken into account the principles of the South-South cooperation, that it is demand-driven, it is voluntary, and it is based on the solidarity, based on the shared experiences of the South-South countries. Those principles were always there to guide our proceedings during the discussions in the South-South cooperation subgroup. Well, now coming to the what it is. Basically, we first arrived at a criteria that how this matrix, how it should be informed when we actually start measuring the particular methodology. And there were 4 criteria we developed and agreed. One is that the measurement will be for sustainable development purposes only. That is, funds which are transferred, they should be for sustainable development purpose. This is one of the most important. Then another was that these funds, they should be concessional in nature. Then the third one was they should be provided with official channels. Then the fourth one was the reporting, it should be voluntary. So these 4 criteria, they were developed during all those discussions. And then coming to the framework itself, the framework, we grouped all the modalities into 3 big groups. The groups are designated just Group A, Group B, Group C. Group A, it includes all those modalities which are monetized. It simply means the financial modalities. It includes 6 items. One is loans, another one is the credit operations where there is some concessionalities there, the interest-free loans, the non-refundable grants, and contributions to international organizations, development banks, and funds. And the 6th one is direct cash transfer. They are further classified. Say, for example, non-refundable grants, it has been classified into 2 parts. One is related with the development purposes, or if it is related with the humanitarian purposes. Equally, the contributions to international organizations, development banks, and funds, it has been further classified into three categories. That is regular contributions to international organizations, voluntary contributions, excluding self-benefit. And the third one is capital paid into international financial institutions and regional / multilateral funds. This is the Group A. And then the Group B, it contains 10 items, and these are the non-financial South-South cooperation modalities. Now, the Group C, that also contains all the same non-financial South-South cooperation modalities. The only difference is that in the group B, some of these modalities by some of the participants of the South-South cooperation, they have monetized it, but some of the countries, they have not monetized it. So therefore, we made two groups. One is where it has been monetized, and other one is where it has not been monetized. I'm going through these items of the group B: infrastructure projects, goods and materials, scholarships, humanitarian assistance, training, participation in peacekeeping operations, technical cooperation, volunteers, joint research, administrative, operational, management, coordination associated with provision of South-South cooperation. These are the 10 modalities which some of the countries have monetized, but others, they have not monetized. Rather, they have quantified these non-financial South-South cooperation modalities in other terms, that is non-monetary terms. And when we say the non-monetary terms, I would like to mention that, say for example, some of the modalities like technical cooperation, some of the countries, they are measuring it in terms of the hours, that is number of hours worked, number of hours provided for the training, etc. Others, they are measuring it in terms of individuals, number of individuals directly benefited, number of volunteers dispatched, number of disaster relief personnel dispatched, number of foreign students they were trained or the scholarship was given. Say for example, in case of scholarship itself, it can be either measured in terms of finance, in terms of monetization, or it can be measured as number of students given the education. Therefore, the idea is to take into account whatever kind of measurement are being taken by a country given the country specific. Yes, we were aware of this issue that it will be very difficult at the international level when we bring into the criteria, the statistical principle of the comparability. But yes, at the same time, that was the best possible we could do because of our emphasis on the flexibility also, because it was the first step toward the measurement of South-South cooperation. Otherwise, till that point, because of the lack of the common definition, because of the nature of the South-South cooperation, there was no attempt as far as measurement is concerned. Yes, yes, I agree that it is difficult to implement. There are still number of challenges, particularly in the area of validity, the statistical application of the statistical principles, the feasibility. That is still the challenges to implement this framework.
So can you hear me? Yeah, we are running out of time. If you don't mind, can you go to the conclusion, because we'd like to keep some time for the discussion. We already have questions on the chat, so probably we will cover more topics in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Razi. I think I have almost covered all the areas which I started, is why it was, how it was, and what it was, and what is the way forward. Now I am open for the questions whenever you want to open for the questions, either at the end of all the panelists or at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Probably we'll keep the questions for the end. So now I just wanted to first thank you for delving into the specificities of the Of the statistical framework, I just wanted to stress out that the global capacity development project that Anu mentioned will provide an opportunity to put the framework to a test in additional countries across region, and that it will be refined. And now, without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Muntasir Majub Hamid Ahmed from the Islamic Development Bank to speak about national mechanisms and ecosystems for South-South cooperation. The presentation. Let me share with you the slides that he prepared.
Thank you, Rashid. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. This is Muntasir Ahmed from the Islamic Development Bank. It's really a pleasure for me to be with you all today to present the concept of national ecosystem for South-South and Triangle cooperation for our member countries. And for those of you who don't know the Islamic Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank is a multilateral development bank that was established in 1975 to support socio-economic development in our 57 member countries. And the bank has a long-standing experience in South-South cooperation. I think we started early, I think back in 1983, we initiated our technical cooperation program to support capacity development intervention between our member countries. Next, please. And also after the technical cooperation program, also we come up with other modalities and mechanisms like the reverse linkage, which is our homegrown South-South cooperation mechanism. And throughout this long journey, we come up with many lessons learned. So the first one, that the global South has has knowledge and expertise, regardless of the level of development of the countries. And also the second lesson learned, that many member countries are ahead in terms of engagement in South-South cooperation compared to others. And we believe that, countries with political commitment and institutional arrangement are ahead. So that's why at the bank, we come up with the concept of national ecosystem for South-South and Triangle cooperation. Sorry. And the national ecosystem concept, it's a collection of interlinked, institutional arrangement that form the enabling environment for South-South and Triangle cooperation. It has 7 pillars. I will present them now, and then later I will define each one of them separately. So we have political will, national strategy, information basis, connected actors, SSTRC, agency, financing mechanism, and performance management. Next, please. And colleagues, I think you are aware that, in 2019, there was the BABA plus 40 meeting in Argentina. And I think in the outcome document, I think South-South and Triangle cooperation has been highlighted as one of the mechanisms and tools to achieve the sustainable development goals. And during that event, the bank participated and presented the concept of national ecosystem. And the bank also advocated for building the institutional arrangement for South-South and Triangle cooperation. And in the outcome document, I think it was highlighted clearly that, the countries should build their ecosystem, should build their institutional arrangement, and also the document called on the Multilateral Development Bank to support this endeavor. Next, please. So now I think I will be defining the pillars of the ecosystem. So we have 7 pillars. The first one is the political will. And by political will, we mean that, next piece, sorry. We need to have a leadership that believing in South-South and Triangle cooperation, inspiring South-South and Triangle cooperation vision, setting challenging and yet realistic target, encouraging all the organizations involved in South-South and Triangle cooperation to act and to go the extra mile, and to instill the South-South cooperation culture within the country. Next, please. The second pillar is the strategy, national strategy for South-South and Triangle cooperation. And this strategy aims to align the efforts of South-South cooperation with the National Development Plan, identify the demands, and also indicate the country's comparative advantage and transferable solution, setting priorities and objectives, distributing the implementation responsibility, and creating soft values like knowledge, international ties, business opportunities, and reputation. Next, please. The third pillar is information basis, and here, like what we mean by that, it's like providing data and information on South-South cooperation, sharing information on the knowledge that the country has, facilitate the matching between the demand and the supply, documenting the achievement of South-South cooperation, and creating end-to-end responsibilities for data collection, validation, and sharing. Next, please. Connected actors, we believe that South-South cooperation is not a one-man show job. There are many actors involved in it. For instance, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is practicing the diplomacy of South-South cooperation, the Ministry of Finance providing the financial resource, the line ministries defining and prioritizing the development problems and challenge, and the National Resource Center or the Center of Excellence, they share information on what knowledge and expertise they have, and that can be transferred to other countries. Okay, next, please. The fifth pillar is about creating a focal point or an agency for orchestrating the whole South-South cooperation ecosystem. And this agency can lead the implementation of the strategy. It can perform the dual role, enriching the inward and outward flow of knowledge and expertise, connecting all the actors through influencing, and building the agency's own core competencies. Next, please. The sixth pillar is financing mechanism. And here, we are saying, there should be an annual budget for South-South cooperation. We should be moving from a single source financing to cost sharing. And under this financing mechanism, we consider all kinds of contribution, be it cash or in kind. And also we are advocating for creating special purpose regional funds and crowdfunding platform. Next, please. The last one is performance management. And here, to provide feedback loops across the whole system, to monitor the implementation, the volume of transaction, the geographical and sector distribution, and also to decide, to help us to decide on the resource allocation distribution, to help us also to mobilize new resource and stop ineffective activity, and also initiating strategic alignment when needed. Next, please. Here comes a very important question: how a national ecosystem of South-South cooperation can be built? Well, next, please. Well, the answer, there is no one size fits all approach. I think each country, based on its context, be it economic, political, social, technological, etc., can establish its own ecosystem using the pillar that I just presented. Next, please. And at the bank, we developed the concept, and now we are moving more to its operationalization. And for that, we formulate a capacity development program to help our member countries to enhance their ecosystem. The program aims to help our countries to build the ecosystem and to assist them to actively engage and contribute in South-South cooperation at the national, regional, and global levels. And this program is open to our member countries. We give priorities to the countries that have existing capacities, so we can help them to develop it. And it's a 5-year program. We started the implementation of this program, and we have many initiatives that are now going on. I think we are helping, Tunisia and Palestine to develop the capacities of their existing technical cooperation agencies. I think we are helping Pakistan to establish a South-South cooperation agency in the country. And the efforts are going on, in the bank to help our member countries in that endeavor. I think with that, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your time. Back to you, Rashid.
Thank you very much. Let me get back to the regular screen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for those insights. And I think the ecosystem developed by the International Islamic Development Bank is very useful for for countries who want to start collecting data and needs a roadmap. As you highlighted, each country comes with its own idiosyncrasies, and there is no one size fits all. And this is part of the challenging aspect of collecting data on South-South cooperation, as many institutions are involved, be they the agency, the development cooperation agencies, statistical offices, or the ministries. So now we are moving slowly into the country experience and initiatives. And I would like to welcome now His Excellency, Mr. Bernardo Cordoba Tello, Ambassador of Mexico to Thailand, who will share with us Mexico's initiatives. I would like to mention that Mexico is a very pioneering country in measuring South-South cooperation, and is working very closely with us, and who is going also to support beneficiary countries to develop their own technical capacity to measure South-South cooperation. So we're very grateful. And now, Mr. Bernardo Cordoba Tello, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be here today to reflect on the relevance of measuring South-South cooperation along with distinguished speakers, as well as the rest of the participants in this forum. On this occasion, I will present a brief summary about how Mexico conceives international development cooperation. Joint effort of governments supported by the dynamism of other development actors to promote actions that contribute to sustainable development. It is important to note that Mexico has a dual character in cooperation for development, as partner and as a recipient. Although, historically, Mexico offers more cooperation than what it receives. The Mexican Agency for International Development Cooperation coordinates international development cooperation actions and generates the necessary tools for planning, monitoring, and evaluating result-oriented, transparent, and effective cooperation. Mexico is engaged in multiple modalities of international cooperations, particularly through the implementation of South-South and triangular cooperation development projects, especially in Latin America, with special attention in Central America and the Caribbean. Mexico is also keen to be part of development cooperation mechanism that enhance multi-stakeholder partnerships, including actors such as civil society, private sector, academia, local governments, and international organizations. I would like to highlight that in Mexico in 2011, the Law of International Cooperation for Development established the creation of a national registry of international cooperation for development to compile information registered by Mexican institutions to serve as a data bank. This law also established that the Mexican Cooperation Agency must develop a methodology to account for human, financial, and technical resources used in international cooperation. Thus, since 2012, around 40 Mexican institutions annually register their financial and human efforts in the framework of international cooperation activities and projects, according to a common measurement methodology. With this data, the Mexican Cooperation Agency carries out a complex exercise to monetize international cooperation for development to produce a yearly public report. The debate of what and how to quantify South-South cooperation has been discussed for decades, facing multiple challenges to reach consensus. As part of these efforts, in 2018, Mexico and Brazil began to discuss a methodology suitable to measure the South-South cooperation of Latin America and the Caribbean in a politically consensual and internationally comparable way. This is a complex task because of the wide diversity among our countries and our differentiated capabilities to perform as South-South cooperation partners. Fortunately, the Sustainable Development Goals Indicator 17.3.1 makes it now compulsory to quantify this type of cooperation. In this regard, the globally agreed voluntary conceptual framework to measure South-South cooperation developed by the Interagency Expert Group and the South-South Cooperation Subgroup is a historical accomplishment that represents the possibility to position the importance of South-South cooperation for the achievement of the 2030 Agenda. Mexico would like to invite all South-South cooperation providers to engage on the measurement efforts to further refine the framework, and we are ready to share our experience and knowledge in coordinating, registering, and quantifying cooperation. Finally, I would like to express our gratitude and support to UNCTAD as custodian agency of the efforts to better measure South-South cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernardo Cordova-Tello, and thank you to Mexico for all the expertise and the support to this project on measuring South-South cooperation at international level. And now I would like to move to another country, another pioneering country, which is also very involved in the measurement of South-South cooperation. So this is Colombia. Unfortunately, the speaker could not make it today, so she kindly shared with us a video. So I'm going to play the video by Miss Viviana Manrique, who is a General Director of the Presidential Agency for Cooperation, for International Cooperation in Colombia.
Dear colleagues, good morning or good afternoon. On behalf of Colombia, I want to thank you for organizing this interesting discussion. Developing and strengthening tools to assess the quality and impact of our South-South and triangular cooperation programs has been a central objective for us over the years, as it is a key recommendation in the BAPA Plus 40 outcome document, completely endorsed by Colombia at a political and technical level. Within that mandate, Colombia has promoted different kinds of projects and dialogues to support initiatives for data standardization, collection, analysis, and dissemination at local, national, and regional levels. We have worked with the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean to strengthen our national capacities for the management of administrative records, developing and exchanging best practices between the National Statistical Institutes of Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, and Peru. We would like to take this opportunity to highlight the efforts of both the UN Commission for Trade and Development and the UN Statistics Division, and the efforts of past year regarding the Working Group on Measurement of Development Support, within which the proposal for the indicator 73.1 was elaborated and further approved by the UN Statistical Commission. Colombia's involvement in this effort, both as co-chairs of the group and members of the subgroup on measurement on South-South cooperation, was enabled thanks to a framework for national coordination amongst the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or National Statistical Office and ourselves at APC Colombia, recognizing the importance of establishing dialogues that seek to promote the importance of South-South cooperation for the implementation of national and global agendas. From Colombia, we have been deeply engaged working within the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation to develop a framework for assessing the effectiveness of South-South cooperation, which we implemented in a pilot with 7 countries, thanks to the invaluable support of Bangladesh, El Salvador, Cape Verde, Indonesia, Kenya, and Mexico. Furthermore, it is key to highlight that within these discussions, one of the key subjects that has been addressed is the importance of strengthening the national statistical systems in order to have evidence-based policy making. Noting the importance of the developed voluntary framework for the measurement of South-South cooperation, we have sought to create scenarios to allow a multi-stakeholder dialogue, such as the community of practice of measurement and quantification of South-South cooperation that is framed within our Observatory of International Cooperation. This community of practice was launched on December 2021, allowing us to engage with dozens of researchers and practitioners from dozens of countries. The community of practice aims to push the knowledge frontier around this topic by understanding the established approaches for measuring South-South cooperation, the current global challenges such as this work being led by the Global South, and the potential futures of the discipline by examining ideas being tested in civil society and data science context. We also just recently published in our Observatory of International Cooperation a virtual course on our call methodology, which organizes knowledge exchange and community actions plans between regions of Colombia. Following on the tradition of South-South cooperation and the importance of fostering communities of change, we hope that the entire Global South can have access to this virtual course and adapt the methodology to each context. Finally, we would like to underscore UNCTAD's role with the organization of this event and encourage our colleagues in the Global South to participate in getting involved with the activities environment, as we are certain that their insights provided by the application for the Conceptual Framework will help us all make better informed decisions. We also highlight the importance of South-South cooperation for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much to Ms. Viviana Manrique, as well as all our colleagues in Colombia, for sharing the experience. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Andrea Riguera, who is a coordinator for planning and communications in the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, also known as ABC, and she will share the Brazilian experience. Ms. Andrea Riguera, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear colleagues, dear friends. It's a pleasure to be here in this important moment for South-South cooperation. Brazil commends the initiative of UNCTAD to organize this side event, taking the advantage of the large presence of representatives coming from developing countries. Data is a fundamental aspect of management, and management is a fundamental aspect of South-South cooperation. There is a growing interest from governments of developing countries, academia and civil society in expanding access to data on South-South cooperation. In some developing countries, as it is the case of Brazil, measurement is mandatory by law. In the context of the UN, monitoring the implementation of the SDGs demands data on the contribution of South-South cooperation to the United Nations 2030 Agenda. South-South cooperation is part of indicator 17.3.1 of target 17.3 SDG 17. Developing countries have taken the lead in the development of a method to quantify South-South cooperation, considering its particularities, overcoming a void that have been filled by other international actors based on criteria conceived for other realities. Such attempts have flaws, underaccounting of South-South cooperation and inaccurate classification of South-South modalities. This subject deserves a comprehensive approach. We should not limit ourselves to quantify South-South cooperation only by adding up expenses. Such a view would divert South-South cooperation from its main track, pursuing development in structural terms. We need to preserve the narrative of development at the core of South-South cooperation. Then that's why the conceptual framework for measurements of South-South cooperation encompasses different modalities of the exchanges between developing countries. Brazil is fully engaged in this process, being one of the pilot countries to test the conceptual framework. Besides, the Brazilian Cooperation Agency, ABC, has expressed its willingness to backing the future implementation of UNCTAD's project aimed at providing support to developing countries interested in joining this important endeavor. As our Mexican colleague just recalled, Brazil and Mexico offered to prepare a South-South cooperation measurement matrix. The proposal was presented to the members of the working group in April-May 2021 and discussed in July 2021. Brazil and Mexico refined the matrix and clarified questions. A glossary of terms was prepared. With China's contribution and support, the matrix was further adjusted. I would like to highlight how critical will be the exchange of experiences and coordination between South-South cooperation providers regarding data collection, processing, and dissemination. Developing countries with more advanced experiences and instruments should be prepared to support other countries with limited practice or means to engage in the measurement of South-South cooperation. In this context, Brazil believes that some institutional and technical prerequisites would need to be in place in order to achieving effective results in measuring South-South cooperations, such as a national focal point mandated to coordinate the whole cycle of measurement, the application of the methodology to measure South-South cooperation should be reflected in national public regulations, availability of databases and management IT systems, human resources prepared to manage the whole cycle of data collection, processing, and dissemination. As a final remark, I would like to invite other developing countries to join us in the unprecedented experience, which Brazil is confident that will result in positive advancements in the management of South-South cooperation and to its strengthening and diffusion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rigueira. Yeah, as mentioned, Brazil is another pioneering country for which we are very grateful for the support, as well as all the expertise that it shares with other countries in the South, besides Mexico and Colombia. I think some colleagues from Brazil also asked for the floor, or am I maybe confused? So if I don't know online, if I'm not sure about that, but I understand some representative of Brazil would like to get the floor. So if you can confirm or infirm. Okay, anyway, we'll move because we are running out of time. If there is an intervention from Brazil, probably we'll keep it for the end. Now we are coming to the last presentation, and for that we are going to cross oceans and go to Africa with the experience of Kenya, presented by Mr. William Maundu Munyoli, who is a senior economist in the State Department for Planning. Mr. William Mondu Mignoli, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rashid, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I submit that financing for development remains central in fueling recovery from COVID-19 and restoring countries to a sustainable path towards achieving the SDGs. This being said, it is obvious that developing countries were disproportionately affected by the pandemic and are in dire need of enhanced quality and sustainable FDI and ODA and any other form of financing for development. South-South cooperation must also, in this context, be seen to count as an essential means to bridge the financing gap, drive the recovery and restore developing countries' economies to sustained growth. The move to measure the contribution of South-South cooperation in financing the SDGs is therefore welcome. It is a big step in helping countries to ascertain whether indeed South-South cooperation works, as we strongly believe that it does. Kenya has been in the South-South cooperation discourse for many years, but accelerated our engagement after hosting the UN Conference on South-South Cooperation in 2009. Over the years, we have attempted to track South-South cooperation through institutional profiles that capture cooperation from both provider and recipient perspective in a quarterly basis of each financial year. This initiative has, however, faced challenges due to lack of a solid institutional arrangement for managing South-South cooperation. We are still trying to find ourselves out as far as institutionalization of South-South cooperation is concerned. We, however, appreciate the GPEDC-led initiative to develop indicators for measuring the effectiveness of South-South cooperation, and are glad to have been part of the pilot of these indicators. We also laud UNCTAD for this noble initiative aimed at measuring South-South cooperation to mobilize the much needed resources in financing the SDGs. And we welcome the proposed capacity development on the voluntary framework. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mondu Mignoli. Now, actually, we have a few minutes before the coffee break here in Bangkok for a Q&A session. So we already have 2 questions on the chat. I would like also maybe to collect a few more and then maybe do a roundtable among the panelists. So if there are questions here in person or online, please raise your hands and then very briefly introduce yourself and ask your question. Thank you very much. Also, I would like also to mention that it could be comment or any experience by another country or an institution who would like to share their own, their own initiatives in measuring South-South with other countries. So maybe I'll start with reading the 2 questions that we have on the chat. So the first one is by Mr. Chandrani Rugobur. So he's asking the following: the measurement of the indicator seems to be not practical at national level. If yes, how NSOs could proceed to collect and compile the indicator? It is also understood that the data can only be available from administration sources. To this, how NSOs should proceed to get the relevant data? Apart from the metadata, is there any guidelines put forward to collect and compile data? So the second question, and I guess which is targeted to the Islamic Development Bank. So it is coming from Jorge Perez, who is congratulating us for the presentations. And he's asking, is there any difference between national ecosystems of South-South cooperation from governance of South-South cooperation, or are they the same thing? If it is the case, what is the advantage of the use of ecosystem instead of governance? And Jorge is from the Anahuac University of Mexico. So I am just checking if there are more questions. I see a hand raised. Yeah, please.
This is Bhushan Shrestha. I work with the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. It's more than a question. I have a comment, and it's are willing to explore further. It's a very great to learn the new indicator that's coming to measure the South-South cooperation under the SDGs 17. My comment is more about how those data, once we move ahead in collecting, used in evaluating the South-South program in the South-South program implemented by the member state as well as the development partners, including you. And I think that part would be very important and useful. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Any other question online or, okay, I see another hand raised.
Hi, my name is Nidhi Radhan.
Do you mind get closer to a mic, please? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. My name is Nidhi Radhan. I am doing my research on South-South cooperation. And what I understand from the discussion here is that every country is using a different framework for measuring their cooperation, their development cooperation, or the aid they provide. Is there a common framework which encapsulates the entire South-South cooperation data and presents it in a comprehensive manner for one to get an understanding of where South-South cooperation is in comparison to the OECD DAC cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm turning back to our panelists. So I would like to invite any of you to start maybe addressing the questions. Maybe, yeah, just I'm not gonna name people, but I see Stefan hand raised. So please, Stefan.
No, thank you very much for the questions and also the presentations. I must say I learned a lot also. And that is always the pleasure of being a panelist. It's always a give and take in a conversation with other panelists and the audience. I just wanted to make some general remarks in how statistics evolves in general terms. We often have, of course, in the statistical sphere and also among the SDG indicators, we have very classical and old and well-developed areas, and we have new areas, which is the nature of an evolving universe. In any new statistical area, we have to start building practical experiences. So I think we are at a very interesting starting point, and I heard many countries already have practical experiences, and we have to build on these experiences. And I think what the framework does already, it creates a language and has elements of a common classification of items to be measured, as what was explained. And I think over time, what will happen, we will refine the various compilation methodologies, the data sources and estimation methods used. And that will over time also increase the comparability of data between countries. So that is, I would say, fairly normal standard statistical process. I just wanted to mention one thing that one question was specifically talking about the role of the National Statistical Office. I am from a statistical office, so you will not be surprised that I would always advocate that national statistical offices play a leading role. We have a discussion in our statistical commission on data stewardship that the national statistical offices, they don't have to produce all of the information, but they should be instrumental in helping to get the country's information, the best quality information existing in the country together. And quite obviously here in this area, there will be a need for cooperation between the different agents. Some were listed on some of the slides of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, administrative records of Ministry of Finance from different financial line ministries will have to be put together. So my recommendation would be definitely for the national statistical offices to play a leading role, but that would also require that they do get access to relevant national administrative records. But this is something that we recommend anyway for the whole spectrum of SDG indicators. So I hope these background remarks were a little bit helpful in terms of how I see this area developing over the next couple of years. But as I said, documenting national practices all around the globe at this point is a most important starting point.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for your answers. Now I'm going to give the floor to Sukhbir. I think he had his hand raised, right, Sukhbir? Am I right?
Yeah, thank you, Rajit. I'm perhaps referring to, yes, the question of Chandrani Raghubar, that measurement of the indicator seems to be not practical at national level. If yes, how NSOs could proceed to collect and compile the indicator? Well, my answer to this question is that actually the framework has taken into account, the focus of the framework is really the flexibility. It is no doubt the standardization. It brings a sort of compactness, a sort of fit in framework. But here the emphasis has been on the flexibility given the nature of the South-South cooperation. And our guiding force was that everything which can be accounted for cannot be counted. And when it comes to application of this work, I think the question is more indicative of the administrative problems instead of relating to the framework, because some of the modalities, they are already being financialized, monetized, and other modalities, they are being quantified, being measured in other units, like in terms of volume, in terms of hours, in terms of number of persons, etc. So therefore, the idea was to provide for, as far as possible, to provide for measurement of each type of modalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sukhbir. Now I would like to give the floor to Anu to address some of the questions as well.
Thank you very much, Rashid, and thanks for the questions and for the exciting presentations. I was very, very happy to hear the experience of countries and have this early sharing of experience now that we are getting started with the new SDG indicator. So I would just like to mention that, yes, this is intended to be a global framework to be used globally by all countries who wish to measure South-South cooperation. It has been endorsed by all UN member states as an initial framework at the UN Statistical Commission this year, and will be tested in the global project so that we can refine it further. The way in which work is organized in countries across the different agencies differs, of course, and therefore it's also flexible which agencies are involved. Typically, like Stefan mentioned, the National Statistical Office has a key role in coordinating statistical activities in the country and reporting on the SDG indicator framework. So therefore, we think that the National Statistical Office can help a lot in bringing all the different agencies together to use the data that the different agencies have collected, for instance, for their administrative work, and help with the methodology to pull all these data together into this indicator. I think this was mainly what I wanted to mention. This is a new official standard in the sense that it has been endorsed by all countries for global use, and we will be refined so that it can be applied by countries that have different data environments and different political environments as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. I think we are slowly coming to an end to this to the side event. I'm just reverting to the other panelists to know whether they want to wrap up, whether they want to make additional comments. So it is the time if you want to add up to what has been said. Otherwise, I would say thank you. Thank you to all. Thank you for your participation and your support. And thank you for all the attendees online from all over the world. And yeah, we will keep you posted. I replied to some of the answers on the live, so you have some links in which you could find more information about the framework as well as the SDG indicator. And of course, I say it one more time, if you want to know more and work with us, just approach us and we will be very happy to collaborate or discuss. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon, good night, or good morning.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Rashid.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you,
Take
Anu.
care.
Bye. Take care. Thank you, esteemed panelists.
Thank you. Merci, au revoir.
Merci, ouais, bonne journée.
Vous êtes du
Du Maroc.
Maroc.
Ouais.